very much for inviting me here today, and I'm glad to be here. So the question is, why should we hope that science will kill faith? I think the first reason is that faith corrupts the search for truth about reality. When we apply reason and critical thinking to the evidence of our senses, we can come to beliefs about reality that are most proportionate to the currently best available evidence. And that's really the test that we should use. And the best way of approaching that test is the scientific method, which is essentially that you observe what's happening, you come up with hypotheses, which does involve imagination. You predict what will happen if that hypothesis is correct, and then you test the hypothesis against experiments that are designed to minimize human bias, and based on that, you come up with theories. And as the physicist Richard Feynman put it, it doesn't matter how beautiful your theory is, or it doesn't matter how smart you are, or it doesn't matter how many letters you have after your name. If your theory doesn't fit the evidence, it's wrong. And that is the key difference between science and faith. Science follows the evidence, whereas faith tries to crowbar the evidence into its already reached conclusions, or alternatively just ignores the evidence. Science seeks to gradually move ever closer to the truth, while realising that we will never reach it, whereas faith believes that we have already found the truth. And most crucially, science tries to prove its theories wrong. That's how science advances, by gradually excluding theories that don't fit with the evidence, whereas faith tries to prove its theories right, or at least assumes its theories are right, and ignores anything that tends to prove the opposite. And the significant difference between the scientific method and religion in terms of finding reliable truths about reality is that science works and faith doesn't. Every generation, by using the scientific method, we learn more and more about how the universe operates naturally without supernatural explanation. I'll take the point in a minute. Every generation, the parts that we don't yet understand, religious people of faith, ascribe to gods. And every generation, the bits that gods are responsible for become fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. So, the Christian God, for example, has gone from a once mighty God that was responsible for creating the universe, flooding the entire planet, impregnating the Virgin in order to give birth to himself, and has now reached the stage where he is reduced to mostly appearing on pieces of toast. And the significance of that is that faith, in an Irish sense anyway, is already dying. You've probably seen that article from a few months ago that showed that 75% of Irish Roman Catholics don't believe in transubstantiation, which is one of the key elements that distinguishes Catholicism from Protestantism. 50% of Irish Roman Catholics don't believe in hell. 15% of Irish Roman Catholics don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. And my personal favourite, someone else in the queue first, my personal favourite is that 80% of Irish Roman Catholics don't believe in God. I'll take that question down there now. So, did you have a question?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just previously you were saying that faith doesn't work. But if like a person in themselves find that faith does work for them individually, then it's not a matter of whether science works better over faith, it's what works for the individual.
Things can work for an individual in terms of what an individual wants to do, but in terms of what I'm talking here is in terms of the most reliable ways of identifying the truth about the reality that we all share. And the reality that we all share is best analysed by trying to minimise human bias. The second reason that we should hope that science will kill faith, aside from science being more reliable as a means of investigating reality, is that faith corrupts our natural sense of morality. And I want to say that this happens even if, again, even if you believe that there is a supreme being that created the universe, there's simply no pathway from that belief to the belief that that being wants us to behave in any particular way. You know, you just can't go from the universe had a beginning, therefore something must have created it, therefore you can't get married. There's no link between the ideas. And religious people who believe that there is a supreme God and that supreme God wants us to behave in a good way are simply believing that because they want to believe it. It's just a personal preference. And in order to believe that, you have to dismiss the idea that there's evil in the world, which is easy enough to do because what religious people will say is either it's some sort of a mystery, it's free will, supremely good God needs to get to the option to do evil in order so that we can choose to do good by free will. But the problem is, you can apply that equally strongly to the idea that there's a supremely evil God. And his purpose is that he wants us to do evil. And why is there good in the world? Well, it's a mystery. But he needs to have some sort of good there in order to enable us to have the free will to freely choose to do evil. And they're both equally strong arguments. There's no reason to pick one over the other than personal preference. Well, there's a third argument, in the words of the late, great George Carlin, which is what if there's a God and he doesn't give a shit. Which seems to fit the evidence better than either of the two that I've given. I'll take that question over there.
How can you so freely say that faith corrupts science, when faith can also be defined as complete trust in something, such as, for myself, complete trust in hope? That complete trust, that faith, is what allows me to go on and, you know, keep going and have the hope in a better tomorrow and to, you know, pursue science and scientific enterprise.
Well, I would suggest that it's an illusion that that's what keeps you going. What keeps you going is the neurophysiological processes in your brain. But the idea of a good God is quite significant because if people prefer the idea that there is a good God, that faith is actually morally and practically dangerous because it allows people to justify to themselves either engaging in or supporting immoral behaviour while believing, although it contradicts their normal sense of passion. Is that a minute left? Okay. That it enables them to do good things or to do bad things while believing that they're doing good things because they believe that a supremely good being is ordering them to do so. Whereas our natural morality, which is based on being a product of our brains, essentially, part of the natural evolution of generations of other beings and then humans living together, is based on natural ideas such as compassion and empathy and reciprocity. And there are much more useful ways of both living together and of species evolving and of being caring towards other people than are listening to the imagined revelations of imagined beings. The final point that I want to make is that science does not claim to know everything. In fact, science doesn't claim to know anything. Science is much more humble than faith. Science says that we can gradually come closer and closer to knowing the truth, whereas religion claims to know the truth. And on that basis, that science is our most reliable way of finding out the truth about reality, and that faith corrupts both the search for the truth about reality and also the search for moral behaviour, or the quest for moral behaviour. I would urge you to support the notion that we should hope that science will be the death of faith and religion.